A survivor disguised as a victim by Diana Murillo. Artemisia Gentileschi, daughter of famous painter Orazio Gentileschi, was born July 8, 1593 in Rome, Italy during the Baroque period. She was known as the First Lady of Baroque painting. She was first introduced to painting by her father. She worked in her father's workshop as a servant, making paint for him. Her father's style of painting was idealized, while her style is more naturalistic and realistic. At a young age, she was shown much more from her father than her brothers. She learned how to draw, mix colors, and paint. A woman's life in the 17th century in Italy was very harsh. Women were seen as vulnerable and defenseless, so they were to be watched with extreme precaution. For a young woman in Rome, it was dangerous to be outside. A woman's virginity was deemed to be pure and honorable to their family. Susanna and the Elders was one of her first known work in 1610. The story goes that two older men threatened to testify that Susanna was alone with a young man in her garden, which wasn't true, unless she had sex with them. Artemisia made it seem so that we sympathize with the women and not with the elders. Artemisia was a very skilled artist at 17 years old. She turned many heads in the 17th century. The way she portrayed historical and biblical events was different from the idealized, sanitized way that male painters have shown for many years. Artemisia did what she wanted and painted what she wanted. Her father believed she had issues with perspective in her paintings, so he decided to hire painter Agostino Tassi to give her private lessons on perspective. Little did Orazio know that hiring Agostino Tassi would be the worst mistake of his life.
On the 6th of May 1611, Artemisia found out the hard way just what Tassi was capable of.
È stato terribile. Mi ha presa con forza. Per me era la prima volta, ho sentito un bruciore improvviso, lacerante. Ho fatto di tutto per tenerlo lontano da me. Gli ho graffiato il volto, gli ho strappato i capelli, gli ho dato morsi, calci, schiaffi. A un certo punto ho tirato fuori tutte le mie forze, gli ho strappato brandelli di carne. Ma lui continuava. Quando ha finito sono riuscita ad afferrare un coltello. L'ho guardato, l'ho minacciato, gli ho detto: tu mi hai disonorata, pagherai per questo.
It was everything he most feared. A daughter dishonored, her marriage prospects dashed, his family ruined, and all under his own roof.
Artemisia, dimmi, è vero quello che dicono? Lo voglio sentire con la tua voce, è vero?
Sì, è vero, padre, è vero.
After everything Artemisia has gone through, she has turned the tragedy into something else, and she elevated herself from the judgment and went on to better things. Artemisia was painting during the Protestant Reformation. It was the 16th century religious, political, intellectual, and cultural chaos that shattered Catholic Europe. Many people were starting to believe that the Church was corrupt and that many of the beliefs strayed away from the Bible. They believed that the Christian Church was arousing its power and disagreed with some of its practices. Some of her paintings took part of the Counter-Reformation. The art she made did not only reflect her, but it also reflected the women of that society. She recreates paintings with her own perspectives. All along, she didn't have problems with perspective at all. She just recreates these paintings and made the women seem strong and courageous rather than make them seem vulnerable and weak, like men are so used to seeing them as. Explaining why Artemisia turned so many heads. Which leads me to introduce the painting that I've been analyzing for so long, Judith saying Holofernes. Holofernes was an Assyrian general who was about to destroy Judith's home, the city of Bethulia. Story goes that Judith beheads the general after he falls asleep drunk. Artemisia was phenomenal at portraying violence compellingly. As we can see in Caravaggio's version of Judith beheading Holofernes, the blood seems unrealistic. It seems as if Holofernes is holding on to red strings from his neck. When we put Artemisia's and Caravaggio's paintings side by side, we can tell the obvious differences. When we see Judith in Caravaggio's painting, she is leaning back towards the maidservant. This makes it seem that Judith is weak and that she doesn't want to get the blood on her. While in Artemisia's painting, she makes it as if Judith is lunging forward to slay Holofernes. In Caravaggio's painting, we can see that Holofernes has a more dramatic look on his face. And we can also see that Holofernes does not even try to fight for his life. While in Artemisia's painting, she makes Holofernes a challenge to both the maid and Judith. So now we see how a male artist painted the story versus how a female artist painted the story of Judith beheading Holofernes. Now, I've mentioned earlier about the Protestant Reformation and the Counter-Reformation, and how I think that Artemisia took part in it. Now, does anything about the sword seem familiar to you guys? Does the shape seem familiar at all? I believe that the sword takes the form of a cross. I think that this is a metaphoric scenario supporting the Counter-Reformation. I believe that the sword symbolizes the Catholic Church and Holofernes represents those who support the Protestant Reformation. I think that Judith represents those who support the Counter-Reformation and her using the Christian Church to berate those who believe in the Protestant Reformation. After everything that Artemisia went through, she did not want to be seen as the girl who dishonored her family. She wanted to be seen as Artemisia Gentileschi, a great painter. Challenge question. Why did Orazio believe that Artemisia had trouble with perspective? In Artemisia's painting, she did not shy away from who she was. She came off as strong and wanted to get her point across. Artemisia was not going to let her past define her or who she will become in the future. She defeated the odds of her becoming a successful painter. She has become more than a successful painter. She has become a role model for female painters all around the world. She has inspired me to not let my past define who I am. Only you can let your past bring you down or make you better in the future. So what is it going to be for you? Will you let your past define who you are as a person, or will you rise above expectations?